This is the 5-minute guide to the Radetzky class battleships of the Austro-Hungarian Navy. The Radetzky class was the last Austro-Hungarian pre-dreadnought class to be built, and falls into the category of other classes like the Lord Nelsons and Dantons in being so-called semi-dreadnoughts, showing a clear advance over previous designs, but not reaching the all-bug gun layout of true dreadnoughts. The class consisted of 3 ships, the Radetzky herself, the Erzherzog Franz Ferdinand and the Zrinyi. With that said, they almost brought Austria Hungary to the forefront of naval technology, as when they were first designed in 1905 there were a number of options considered as shown in this table. As you can see, options 3 and 4 followed the dreadnought design philosophy, although in both cases the additional guns were in wing turrets, that would have meant a broadside of 6 or 5 guns respectively, unless echelon turrets were considered. Whilst this would have put them in the same category as the Hispana-class dreadnoughts of Spain, it would have been just enough to make the leap. Unfortunately, the additional weight of these guns would have pushed the displacement of the ships above the 16,000-ton limit that the Austro-Hungarian shipyards were capable of, and so these were not selected. Instead, the final design listed was chosen, which included a significant number of large secondary guns in wing turrets as well as a light tertiary battery. This left an armament of 4 12-inch guns in a pair of twin turrets, one forward and one at the rear. A secondary battery of 8 9.4-inch guns and 4 twin turrets, 2 on each side. A tertiary battery of 23.9-inch guns and a wide-ranging array of other weapons that included 4 70mm anti-aircraft guns, a pair of 66mm landing guns and 4 47mm anti-torpedo boat guns. 3 small torpedo tubes completed the extensive weapons loadout on a hull that hit the 16,000-ton weight limit when fully loaded. With main belt armor of 9.1 inches and a speed of just over 20 knots, they were slightly under-armored, but somewhat faster than other later pre-dreadnoughts. However, unusually for this type of ships, and, in part because of their later construction dates, they had more extensive underwater protection than many ships of this era. Specifically, the ships had a system unique to Austria Hungary that involved armoring the ship's double bottom as well, instead of using the armor purely to stop incoming shells. This meant that any explosion had to be strong enough to rupture armor plate as well as just the hull. However, by the time they were completed in 1910 and 1911 they were truly obsolete, as the first super dreadnoughts were coming into service around this time. But it must also be considered that they were not planning a fight with Britain or Germany, rather the enemy was planned to be some combination of Italy and France, both of which were also lagging behind in the dreadnought race, and had also built semi-dreadnought type ships quite late, against which the Austro-Hungarian vessels compared relatively favorably. The ships had a relatively quiet career in the few years running up to World War I. The Radetzky herself was present at the British Coronation Review at Spithead alongside numerous other nations' battleships. During the Balkan Wars, the 3 ships took part in an international fleet demonstration protesting the war, and conducted the first seaplane launch operations from a major capital ship. During the First World War, the Austro-Hungarian fleet was called upon by the German Mediterranean Division, which consisted of the battle cruiser SMS Goeben and light cruiser SMS Breslau, for assistance in getting out of the port they had been in at the start of the war, since British ships had begun to assemble off Messina in an attempt to trap the Germans. The Austro-Hungarian High Command was wary of instigating war with Great Britain, and ordered the fleet to avoid the British ships, and to only openly support the Germans while they were in Austro-Hungarian waters. In October 1914, the French installed heavy artillery on to support the army of Montenegro against the Austrians. An attempt to dislodge the batteries with the pre-dreadnoughts of the Habsburg class failed, as their 9.4-inch guns were not powerful enough, and so the Radetzky was sent to assist them. Her 12-inch guns were powerful enough to force the French to abandon the position. Later on, in May 1915, all 3 ships bombarded the Italian naval base at Ancona after Italy entered the war on the side of the Triple Entente. As the war drew to a close, Austria prepared to transfer her entire fleet to Yugoslavia to keep it out of Italian hands. One day before the armistice, Yugoslav officers with scratch crew sailed Radetzky and Zrinyi out of Pala, just as the Italian fleet arrived. The 2 battleships flew American flags and sailed south. They called for American forces to meet them and accept a surrender, so 2 battleships surrendered to a squadron of American submarine chasers. However, the Allied powers ignored the transfer of the Austro-Hungarian ships to the Yugoslav Navy and insisted the ships were to be ceded to Italy. Radetzky and Zrinyi were broken up in Italy in 1920 as Herzog Franz Ferdinand survived until 1926, when she too was scrapped in Italy. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or a suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below.